For 40 years, God led his people through the wilderness or the desert area. During that time, he rained down manna from heaven for their food, and he sheltered them by a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. However, when they entered into the promised land, there was no more the cloud and the pillar of fire. The manna had ceased, but God said he was going to bring them into a good land, a land flowing with milk and with honey. Let's read about it in Deuteronomy chapter 8, beginning at verse 7. For the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, a land of brooks of water, of fountains and springs, that flow out of the valleys and hills, a land of wheat and barley, of vines and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of olive oil and honey, a land in which you will eat bread without scarcity, in which you will lack nothing, a land with stones or iron, and out of whose hills you can dig copper. When you have eaten and are full, then you shall bless the Lord your God for the good land which he has given you. And now here is Arie David to tell us more about this good land that God brought his people into.
God really blessed us with a good land. Good land, first of all, has a lot of water. And God promised that the water will come from the sky, from the clouds, but also will emerge from the mountain. And just, I'm standing in a place which is seconds from me down, is the spring of Ein Karem. This spring evolves from the mountain, and all the life of the village is around this spring. We have to understand what is the system. Above the spring, we have the trees that are growing just from the natural rain that we get. But under the spring, we have what we call gardens, vegetation garden, like it was in Egypt. So, I want to talk a little bit about what we see here. God promised us a good land. And among the trees, among the 7 things, the barley, the wheat, the fig tree, you remember the pomegranates, and of course the wine and honey, and of course the last one, which is the oil, maybe the most important. But I want to just relate a little bit to the honey. What the honey means. In biblical time, when it's mentioned honey, it's not meaning to the honey of the bees. There are only 2 places in the Bible that we hear about bee honey. One of them is connected to Samson, one of them connected to Jonathan, son of Saul. So about which honey the Bible talks? About the fruits from the trees. The fruits will be so much that people could not be able to collect them out of the trees and preserve them by drying them. There will be so much fruits that the people will have to take the fruits, to boil them, add sugar, and get what we call now jam. So this jam was the honey. What is jam number 1 or honey number 1 in biblical time? Date honey. The tree which is behind me is called palm tree, and all palm trees in Israel are producing date. Now, they produce dates only if they had hot weather. So in the valleys or in the Jordan Valley, they grow and produce huge amount of dates. But here on the mountain, we are more than 2,000 feet above sea level. They don't produce dates. So why they are growing here behind me? Why we see these palm trees behind me? And here I come to the point. People planted the trees because the trees meant to them very much. What is the meaning of the palm tree? The meaning of the palm tree is freedom. During the Roman time, people were not allowed to wave a palm tree. a palm leaf. Why? Because it was like taking the flag of the enemy. Now, look what happened. When children of Israel went out of Egypt, they covered their booth with the leaves of the palm. All during their wandering in the desert, God provided them leaves of palms in the oasis. So the palm tree was a kind of sign of freedom. Now, what are these palms behind me doing here? These palms connects to the church that is on my other side. You see, the believers in Yeshua, they consider Him to be the one that gives us free. And because everything around Jesus is first of all freedom, freedom from sin, the tree that presented this freedom is the palm tree. So around every church, and you can see it all over Jerusalem, you see palm trees are growing, even though they don't give the dates. What I want here to end by saying, look how important that we have signs in front of our eyes. When we have signs, when we have flowers, when trees, and we understand the meaning of the tree, with just looking on the tree, the scripture, the word is coming alive to ourselves. When I look on these palms, I remember immediately the freedom that we have in the Lord Yeshua HaMashiach. And this is more important for me to remember this than to eat even the dates. Why? What is the end of the passage that we have just read? That whenever we come to the land and we see all the goodness that God gives us, let us remember the mercies of the Lord. And when we remember the Lord, this is the beginning of every good thing that can come out of this.